Hello everyone. Today I completed an internship project from ineuron, which is based on data analytics, and the project title is Data Visualization of Bird Strikes between 2000 and 2011. What is a bird strike? First of all, when a plane is flying, and sometimes birds hit the plane and cause damage to the engines or windows or any structural part of the plane. So this is called a bird strike. So the data which is mentioned here is provided in this link down here. And after downloading the dataset, you will get this Excel file which contains columns, namely types, names of all the airports, at the altitude at which the bird struck the plane, aircraft name, make and model, number of times the plane was struck. So here we can see over 100 times, sometimes only 2 to 10 birds strike, and this here is number of actual strikes, the kind of confirmed strikes. And here, and it is mentioned here whether the plane was affected, like any kind of damage was noted, the date at which the incident occurred, the name of the company, flight company, the origin state from where the plane was taking off, and the destination. And here you can also see phase of flight. So we can know whether the bird hit the plane, it was climbing while it was landing, or while it was approaching a runway, or it was taking off. And here also conditions are mentioned, whether it's snowing, it was fog or rain, or none means maybe daylight or none of these things, rain, fog, or there snow was there. Or here whether the remains of the birds were collected or not, or whether the samples were sent to the Smithsonian. And we also have remarks. What remarks? Like Flight 7 pilot reported 100 birds of unknown type, and these are the remarks by the pilots. So first of all, we will pull the data from this Excel sheet into Jupyter Notebook. Before that, we will have to run some codes to import some libraries like pandas and numpy library, which are useful for analytics purposes. And after that, we will run it, and we will then load the data in Excel in Jupyter. So here we are loaded the data set, and we can also check the shape of the data, the dimension, describe it, the count maximum value. Then we will have to find the null values in the data. So after running df is null, we can find that in the aircraft type where there are 129 null values and so on. And in the remark section, there are 4,771 null values. This many null values, uh, we might remove this column from the data set. While when we upload the data in Power BI, and but first we have to check whether this data is relevant or not. So after that, we will check for unique values, and we can find a number of unique values because there are basically comments. Like you can see, these are comments. It won't hold such values while while visualizing the data. After that, can check for unique values in origins of state. Then likewise, we will check for all the unique values in the data in the data set. The columns mention large number of missing values. After that, we will check the size of the data and info, know the type of the column. Most of them are objects. We have Boolean also and int64 also. And first what I did, I copied the data using DA copy, and whatever practice I performed on the copy data from the original source. So first I will drop the null values from the data, but I will select it like null values will drop from specific columns only, not from the whole data set. After doing that, we will check for the null values again, and you can see all the null values from the columns are dropped except for remarks, because there is no point removing null values. We will simply delete this whole column when we use the data in Power BI. After doing some describe test, and then we will drop the column remarks. And now we can see there is no null value in the data, and the remarks column was also removed. Doing some final checks in the data, and then I will export the data into an Excel sheet using this command. After that, we will pull the data into the Power BI, and you can see the data is there. It is a clean data. Just doesn't have any null values in it. Moving to the dashboards, first first is the number of bird strikes. So there are 24,000 bird strikes during the year 2001 and 2000 and 2011, which accounted for $136 million of money into repairs. And here we can see whether the number of aircrafts which were damaged during the impact and the number of aircrafts which weren't damaged during the impact. So we can see most number of planes weren't, like, they were not severely damaged, and 2,384 bird strikes resulted in the damage to the plane. Here you can see as the number of flights increased, the encounter with flight birds also increased, resulted in a spike in the number of incidents. Here are top 10 airlines in terms of having encountered bird strikes. So this business airlines encountered the highest number of bird strikes, maybe because they are flying at larger frequencies, followed by Southwest Airlines, American Airlines, Delta Airlines. And here you can see the amount of strikes which happened below 1,000 and above 1,000 feet altitude. Coming to page number 2, here the list of 50 airports in which the possibility of bird strikes is higher, because you can see at Dallas Airport, 802 bird strikes were reported. So this airport is prone to bird strikes. And here we can see when do most of the bird strikes occur. So the circumstances are rain, fog and rain, snow, different combinations. And we can see even when there was none of these things, still the bird strikes were there. So we can tell environmental factor has a very little to play, a very little role to play, because even on the sunny day, strikes were there. And we can see when there was snow, there were many birds in the sky, which resulted in less bird strikes. When do most bird strikes occur? So we can see the amount of bird strikes which occurred most was when the plane was approaching the landing. After that, when it was taking off, then it was climbing, when it was descending. And there were many bird strikes when the plane was parked. And coming to the next page, here's the average altitude of airplanes, of all airplanes, when at the time of strike. So it is 801, and this graph shows where the pilots informed before the strikes. So you can see that 47% were informed and 52% were not informed. So it is almost half. Then we can here see impact on the flight. Like if the bird hit the plane it was cancelled, landed, or it began to operate normally. or if there was any engine shutdown. So we can see 81% of the time no damage was done, and even the flight routine wasn't changed. After that, 9%, like 9% of the time precautional landing was 9% of the time landing was recommended. 3.2 was at takeoff was aborted, and at very less 2 point like all of this 2.12% at the times when the bird struck and the engine shut down. Coming to the next page, you can see then all it is a map of the USA, and here you can see all of the states, and among those states highest number of strikes. You can see California has the highest number of strikes, followed by Texas, and states like Montana are very where bird strikes are very rare. And in this graph, we can see the size of the birds. So a large number of strikes happened when the birds were small, and larger birds which fly at a very high altitude didn't have anything to do with those strikes. And here we can see the size of the plane, where it was a large plane or a small plane. So 16, like most of the time, it was a small plane. Here is the data and data visualization of all the bird strikes that happened between 2000 and 2011. Thank you.